Welcome to Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff, where we interview newsmakers, storytellers, and all-around interesting people. Sit back, relax, unless you're driving, and enjoy the show. Here's Jackson.
Hello. I am Jackson Huff. This is Not in a Huff. Thanks for joining me. As always, I appreciate it. This week, I am speaking with another traveler, but different than most that I've spoken to, where she is a van lifer. I guess that's the term now that a lot of us know, but she's done most of her traveling. She has done overseas trips as well, but most of her traveling has been done by van. She has built a couple different vans now that she's lived in. Sprinter vans and those I don't know what you would call them, cargo vans or utility vans, but the ones that have a sliding door and a big back area that some companies use for delivery. There's a culture out there now that are converting them and making them small, super small homes and traveling across the country and, staying in national parks on public land and just, experiencing things. That's all I can say. It was really, really fascinating to speak with her. We talk about what inspired her to, take this journey and now a lifestyle. She's been doing it more than 5 years now. How it turned into just a 1 year journey to see the country into 5 years, and now this is her life. She works remotely. She travels pretty much full time. We're going to talk a lot about the highs and lows of living in a van. Some of the surprising parts of it, how she built her van. We're also going to talk about mental health. There was a really fascinating conversation there where she's traveled with partners before. She's traveled solo, and those offer pluses and minuses both. But she does have a really candid, real conversation that I appreciate, talking about mental health and some of her struggles throughout her life with that, and how this lifestyle that she has now has really helped her in her journey, and some of the things she has found beneficial there. So I really, really think you're going to enjoy this, whether you like to just hear a story about someone who's doing something you may not be able to do, and that's go and travel and live in a van full time. Maybe it's something you're interested in getting involved in, and you want to hear somebody who's been doing it for a significant amount of time, or maybe you just like a good story. It is all of those things. Not to mention the mental health aspect too, which she says some really, really awesome stuff, and some really impactful things there too. So I think you're going to enjoy this one. Here is my interview with Katie Larsen. I'm here today with Katie Larsen. Katie, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So before we get into what we're going to talk to you about, which is obviously van life, in your own words, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a self-employed. I do freelance self-employed business work on the road. I travel full time and have been in a van for 5 years now. I grew up around the Portland, Oregon area, and spent some time in Seattle, spent some time overseas abroad, graduated from college in Oregon, and then continued on to just kind of work for a little bit and eventually just transition into full-time travel. So I'm a traveler, a writer. I do social media, blog content management, kind of jack of all trades to make have a lot of income revenue streams.
Yeah, I think that's important. When you're kind of not just a solo traveler, but when you're kind of self-employed, to diversify, to have a lot of different things going on. Because when one goes away, there's so many people, I feel like, that they do this whole off the grid thing. They are self-employed, and then they just have one thing, and when that dries up, people are like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? So I think that's really cool for sure. So I know that you're in Oregon. You said that you're from Oregon. Just from your background, I don't think you're in a van right now. So where are we finding you today?
So I am at my parents' house for the day. My van is in the driveway, but I still am in the van full time. I just am here hanging out with my sister and letting our dogs play to blow off. I usually come back to Oregon around this time of year to do like medical, dental, kind of renew any paperwork, insurance, kind of get everything on my to-do list done for the year before I head back out after the holidays. So
No, that makes some sense. So let's kind of start at the beginning of your van journey. Tell us a little bit about, I guess, what made you decide, hey, that's something I want to do, and a little bit about, I guess, that first van build.
yeah, so I was working a corporate job after college in Portland, Oregon. I was dating somebody at the time, and I had just gotten back from about a year of traveling abroad. Did an internship in South Africa, did a couple months in Europe, was really starting to catch the travel bug. I think like a lot of people, it's transitioning a little bit now, but for the most part, you're told you do this track of step-by-step things that you check boxes by a certain age of, going to college, get a job, settle down, all that stuff. So I was kind of on that track. And then this person I was dating kind of introduced the idea to me pretty early on in our relationship and was like, I really want to do this sometime. Is it something you'd be interested in? And I was kind of swimming in debt from college. And so I said, okay, let me move in with my parents, like get a beater junk car, work a corporate job, save up money and pay off loans for a year. And then let's talk about it. So I did that, and we decided to start looking for vans, which was about a 6-month process. We originally wanted to do a used van, hoping it would be a little bit more attainable with pricing and all of that. But we kind of, after crunching numbers, decided to get a new van that was reliable. And our goal was just to build it out, travel in it for a year, and then sell it to make all of our money back. And it was just kind of going to be this chapter of kind of like a gap year. So we did that. The build took about 6 months, working on it while both working full-time jobs. So it was a lot of like late nights, headlamps, waking up early on Saturday and Sunday, working all day into the night. And then we bought the van in October of 2016, and we hit the road in June of 2017. So we each saved up $10,000 to live off for the year. The goal was to just do that, sell the van, and then kind of go on our merry little way. But throughout that year, we were unemployed, and I kind of started looking into freelance and remote work. I really started to fall in love with the concept of van life. And at the end of the year, he was ready to be done, and I was not. So I bought out his half of the van, and I just kind of continued on my journey.
No, that's cool. I want to get more into that journey, but what made you decide that, hey, we want to build our own van, I guess maybe customize it to what we want? And is it even a thing that there's, those ready-made vans that are already built? I don't even know.
Yeah. People have been living in vans since, forever. There's people in the 70s, there's V-dubs, there's a whole bunch of people that have been doing this for like a super long time. But right now it's really kind of blowing up in the media. It's more common. You can kind of say the term van life, and people might not fully understand what you mean, but they've probably heard of one or two people that have done it before. But 5 years ago, I only happened to know one person that lived in a van, and it was just because randomly enough, she was a girl in the van life community that I went to high school with. But it wasn't like, I didn't know that there was van life gatherings, or that there was kind of this like online and in-person community of people that kind of do this. So we wanted to always do a DIY build. And I still am really passionate about that. I mean, we'll get into this later, but I now have a different van, which I also did a DIY build on. There's pros and cons, I think, to doing a professional build versus your own. I mean, doing it on your own, you'll have to have either some sort of skills or being really, really willing to do a lot of research. You have to have the space to do it, the time to do it, the tools to do it, all things that kind of have to perfectly align, and quite frankly usually requires a lot of favors of people, like, can I park my van in your driveway and build and run power tools all the time, or helping certain people. A lot of people will hire out like electrical but then do the rest of it themselves. So that was really important to us to really have it be something that we wanted. Bigger companies or conversion companies do that, and Portland is a really good place to do that because there's so many here. Like if you drive around, you just see converted vans everywhere. The thing with that is that you really have to have the funds to do that. It's a little bit easier to get financing for that because a lot of times a bank will give you a loan for a professional conversion, but it's harder to get a loan to buy materials for yourself. You usually have to get a personal loan for that on top of an auto loan, unless once again you have all the money. There was, and even now worse, a really long wait list for professional conversions. So a lot of the places are a year at least to wait to get the vehicle. Even if you're buying new off the lot, a lot of places and companies are just buying up vans, transits, sprinters, ProMasters. So you usually have a wait on the vehicle, and then you have a wait from the person or the company that's going to actually build out for you.
Yeah. I feel like I'm sure you're cursing yourself sometimes outside with those headlamps trying to convert it. But afterwards, I'm sure that it's just a little bit more special to know that you've kind of done it yourself, and that's then what you're living in. People build their own homes, and I feel like they talk about, I built this for the next 30 years. So I'm sure that it's a more special thing when you've done it yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it's super challenging. And after the first one, I swear I was never going to do it again. And now I swear I'm never going to do it again. I mean, it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it takes a lot of patience and time and money. And it's a lot of work. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's worth it to really have something custom at such a small space, to have something that's really livable for you, especially if you're doing full time. That was just always really important to me, the first round and now the second round.
I guess when I was looking at, more van things and more, because people are converting ambulances and old army vehicles and all kinds of stuff. I feel like this may be a thing for more when you've got this ginormous army vehicle. It's cute to name it, but have you named your vans?
I haven't. Most people have, and I just nothing stuck. Nothing ever really called out to me, and things have just changed so much in the last 5 years. The way I've traveled, who I've traveled with, how I've traveled. So I just, yeah. I mean, I think really the only thing is kind of like the Instagram handle that started as like a way to update my parents and grandparents. That kind of the So We Bought a Van is really the only thing that's carried its way through all 5 years.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you about that. I mean, what made you decide to start that handle? Was it simply to update family, or was it something that you knew at the time that, hey, I wanted to take more people along on this journey, or how did that work?
Definitely never thought of it as like work or a job or a business. It really did start out like, if you go back at really old blog posts on my website, it's written like a personal journal, because it's like, I went to New Orleans for the first time, and instead of telling my friends and family the same stories over and over again, I was like, I can do photos. I love writing. It's just kind of a way to update people. And then the Instagram really was, for the build, like showing all the tiny details to, once again, people within personal community of like, this is the wood we're using. This is how we did the electrical. And then over time, especially once we got on the road, things just kind of shifted, and there was more interest. And now I really use kind of those platforms as more of a resource to provide, van life resources, build resources, tips and things that I've learned over the years about either building a van or living on the road, living in a vehicle, living small, all of those things. So it's really kind of grown into things like no intention really behind it. I think it just kind of happened, and I was like, okay, we can run with this.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably what made you successful. I feel like the people who are thinking, I'm going to make this an Instagram thing, they don't last all that long. I read somewhere, which we're going to talk about the highs and lows here in a little bit, but this was kind of funny and grotesque at the same time. Somebody was saying that, the Instagram models don't last very long, because being in van life, you have to deal with your own shit, both figuratively and literally, and people don't do well with that.
Yes, it is very true. It's small space. There's a lot of alone time. There's a lot of mindless driving. So both within yourself and the fact that you're living in a small space. You might have running water in your sink or something, but it's not like you have pipes that give you constant resources. So bathroom, dishes, all of that stuff is just like most people have like a chore day. Otherwise, you're kind of always doing chores. So it does take a lot of effort and intention, and it's great, but it's work. You have to work really hard to live small, not only small, but also to live in a mobile tiny home.
Yeah. So what made you decide this is I've talked to a lot of travelers, whether they're backpackers, whether they're people that, travel more in luxury and fly and stay at hotels. What made you decide, you had this quest and want to travel, but what made you decide that van was something you wanted to do? I know in the very beginning that it was a significant other that kind of gave you the ideal, but that's a long time ago. You could have got out of it and been a backpacker. So what made you decide, hey, this is the route I want to go with my travels?
Yeah, I mean, after I went abroad, I think that was like 2013, maybe. Like I said, I lived in South Africa for a chunk of time, and then I did the backpacking thing around Europe and visited like 12 countries or something over a couple months. And I think one of the things that really encouraged me to say yes to the van was when I was abroad, everyone was like, where should I go if I go to the States? Like, what do you recommend? And I was like, I've been to like a few states. I don't know that much. I hadn't really been to very many national parks. I wasn't really that outdoorsy in most of my life. I grew up camping and doing some basic hiking with my family and Girl Scouts and all of that. But once I got back, I got really into hiking, and I got really more into the outdoors and just local travel. I spent a lot of time in the gorge in Portland, just doing kind of different trails around the same area. And being outside just became such a big part of my life and a hobby that, especially once I had the time and the freedom to travel in the van, and I was unemployed, so I had nothing really limiting me. I didn't have to be anywhere for service. Like, we drove 50,000 miles the first year in the van and we did all 50 states. We flew to Hawaii, but we drove all the way to Alaska. We drove all the way to Florida. We drove all the way to Maine. And it was life changing. It's really magical to have control over your own life and your own schedule in that way, and to be so connected to like the time of the year, the seasons, the weather, the sunrise, sunset, like all of that stuff. Just being able to open my door every morning and just immediately be outside, that was something that I really found a lot of peace in. And I know we'll kind of talk about this too, but I've had some mental health struggles for most of my life, and I really saw kind of a transition in myself on the road, and it just became really important to me. And now it's gotten to a point that if I'm not in the van, I can feel myself kind of regress in a lot of ways emotionally, and it's just turned out to be the most healthy and like most healthy environment for me, especially if I want to be thriving. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, I guess, some of the cool experiences you've had. Of course, everyone looks at van life and sees the glamour of Instagram. Just a side note, of course, I'm going to ask you about the not cool experiences next, but tell us about some of those Instagrammable moments that was, I guess, kind of made it all worthwhile.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things to do in the van is find water. Usually with water, there's parking around it, camping around it. So that for me is really one of my favorite things that I get to do, is I can find a lake or a body of water or a river, and I can spend time outside by the water. Now that I have a dog, she's super happy, and then I can go just park at night. But like, I have everything at my fingertips. So that's really, I think, like the convenience of being able to experience beautiful places without having to like get a rental car from a hotel and go there. It's like, in between hikes at Zion National Park, I can just go to my car and cook a hot lunch on the stove, and then I can go back out an hour later for the next thing. So, I mean, national parks have always been huge. At this point, I've done pretty much all the ones that I've wanted to ever see, a lot of them, a lot of times. One of my favorite things I recently did is I traveled to Baja, California, Mexico with some friends, and we caravanned down there and lived on the beaches in Baja for 2 months and just explored the entire peninsula. And that was really like, you open your door, you're parked on a beach 10 feet from the water with like a cabana, and it's this blue ocean, and you make your coffee, and it's just the most fun thing, especially when you get to experience it with friends that are doing the same thing as you.
Yeah. What makes you, I guess, how do you decide where you're going to go next? Are you a planner that's got everything planned out from now to next November, or do you just kind of go where the road takes you?
It's really changed over the years. The first year was really to set out and see as much as I could, as fast as I could, knowing it was kind of a limited time, or thinking it was a limited time. So that was really planned out. Like, when I was going to cross a state line, I would draw a map on a piece of paper and I would mark the different places and things I wanted to see around it so I could do the most like efficient loop before heading off to the next place. And that was always like, okay, this many miles, this many hours between this location to the next. Here's the campsite close by. And that was really a lot of planning. Over the next few years, it became more fluid. There's a couple companies that do van life gatherings that are like pretty organized, and it's like 200 people in the forest or on a ranch, and you just do seminars and bonfires and you just connect over like-minded people living the same lifestyle as you. So one summer, maybe 3 summers ago, one of the companies did a countrywide tour where every month they had a gathering in a different state. So I went to all those gatherings, and then a group of 20 to 40 of us kind of caravanned in the meantime between the different states. So there have been times like that where it is organized. And then as I've gotten more into solo travel, it really has just been, where do I feel like going today? Do I want to be in the mountains? Do I want to be in California? Like, do I want to go to the beach? And that's been a lot more just flexible based on really like quality campsites, or if I love someplace, I'll stay longer, or if I'm unhappy, I just leave really quickly. So there was probably a year or two where I didn't have any plans. And then, you know, the last maybe 2 years, I've been trying to do an international trip per year. So between that and just like big weddings or things that people in my life, as we're kind of growing up more, I'll be like, I have 3 months to do whatever I want, but I know I need to be here at this time. Now I can definitely feel myself like appreciating my tiny home for it just being a tiny home. I like my space. I like that everything is with me all the time, but I'm not just living in a van anymore to travel and to see things. It's really become more just about kind of the simplicity of it as well. So I'm definitely not stopping anytime soon, but I think if I do settle down in the future, it would probably still be some sort of small living, just maybe more stationary with the van still to be there to kind of provide the benefits that has.
I gotcha. Yeah. And I want to talk about solo travel here in a minute, because I've done very a minute amount as you have, but I want to talk about that. But first, let's get back to that question. What is some I guess less desirable parts of van life?
Oh man, I don't even know how to start that. It's really taken an adjustment to go from like wearing a suit and showering every day and getting ready every day and wearing makeup all the time, dressing up, to showering sometimes once a month. Sometimes the shower just means jumping in a river. I have a solar shower, and I had a shower installed on the outside of my previous van, but I mostly just use the Planet Fitness membership. If you're a Black Card member, you get access to any of the locations around the country. So that is how I get my hot showers. There's also nothing worse than running out of propane when you're in the middle of cooking. That's really rough. I've like splurged on a nice steak before and then ran out of propane in the middle of nowhere when I was in the middle of cooking. Running out of water is really hard. Like, okay, I have dishes in my sink. I can't brush my teeth. I can't wash my hands to put my contacts in. I have to drop what I'm doing and go get water right now. So I also upgraded. I times 3 the amount of water I carry with me, and now I carry almost 30 gallons, but I used to only have 10. Different seasons, if you're not going to chase seasons, that's definitely something that is harder. Like, I've been in moments where there's ice on my windows and I'm wearing a beanie and 2 sweatshirts and sweatpants, and I'm cuddled up in my van. My first van did not have heat in the back. So it'd be like 12 degrees in Colorado tonight. You're just going to sleep outside. Now I have a diesel heater, which is, or a gas heater, which is tapped to my gas tank. So I actually have a thermostat in my van that I can now comfortably set a temperature to, and I have better insulation. So there's just a lot of things that, once again, if you're, it's going to be really different if you live in an older van with a simple build versus a really luxurious, vehicle.
Yeah. Another thing you said before, I think in something I watched of you, that I think this kind of shows that, you're comfortable with the van, is you said when people, you like the bed that you have in the van. So when people offer you, to stay in their house or to have a hotel, you said, I don't really want that. I like this bed. So I feel like some people think about van life and just like, this is what I'm doing to rough it. But I feel like you're more comfortable just in your own space and being in that van than I guess in someone's bed.
Yeah. I mean, if I go stay in somebody's house or in a hotel, like, I have to pack all of my stuff up. I have to get all my toiletries and my clothes, and now that I have a dog, there's like food, water, toys, all of this other stuff, leashes. So yeah, like I said, I'm like in my parents' house right now, hanging out with my sister and doing some work. But I even when I'm in town to see my family, I still go out and sleep in my van every single night, and I'm more comfortable there. I have everything at my fingertips, and my dog is more comfortable. She has her own little area with her bed and her toys and her food. So it really is. It's really quite a comfortable van. My last van was too, but really right now in this season, the heat in the toilet has made a huge, huge difference. And yeah, I would choose my van over anything else.
Let's talk about your family and how they guess have adapted. You say that hey, I've got 3 months and then I've got to come back and go to a wedding or something. Does your family see this as kind of like you're the, I guess my family would be like, this is the free spirited person of the family, and we just see you every once in a while. And what exactly does your family think of your lifestyle?
I've definitely kind of always walked by my own, beat of my drum. I'm really similar to my family in a lot of ways, but also really different. And I think especially after I went to Africa by myself, I didn't know anybody. I didn't go with anybody that I knew. And I just completely did that at the age of 23. I think that then they kind of knew that things were shifting. And, by the time that I told my parents, which I waited till like the day I was buying the van to tell my parents, and I told them separately, and I tried to just like smooth it into conversation. I think my mom's response was something like, there's nothing you can do anymore that's going to surprise me. And the first year, it kind of was this joke, like, oh yeah, this is our millennial daughter. She just doesn't work and she just travels around in her van. And it's very like, ooh, like fleeting freedom and whatever. But now I think especially that I've developed myself into a freelancer. I'm self-employed. I have my own little business. I'm successful. I'm supporting myself completely. And since I've been doing it also for so long, it's really shifted. Like the first van build, they didn't see as much, but the second van build I did mostly at my parents' house in the garage. And so they saw every tiny step of every shipment that came to the door, every time I needed to get tools, like my 3 times a day trips to Home Depot. And also there's been some things like my mom really wanted to try to learn to understand what I was doing once I decided to continue solo. So she and one of her friends actually flew out and spent a week in the van with me and really got to know hands-on, like, what does it look like to deal with different like weather, drive constantly? How do you keep yourself warm? What do you do for food? How do you find camping? So that was really like a good insight. And I'm really happy that she did that. And I've had a couple friends do that too, that it's the best way to learn about something is if you actually go out and do it. So they're all pretty understanding of it. They all actually really, I think, respect it and like it. And it's hard to not be here all the time. Like I have my first niece who's 18 months old, and definitely since she was born, I've been coming home more often throughout the year, but I used to only come home once or twice a year for like a week or two. And missing holidays and birthdays and Mother's Day, all that stuff, it can really take a toll. But that's why usually now every year I try to come home, like I said, around the holidays and spend, a chunk of time reconnecting with everybody, because I could feel some of my relationships slipping away by just life and time passing, and I wasn't here.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've watched a little bit again of you giving tours, and in those tours, obviously you see just how compact the space is. It is, you do have to be intentional in everything you do, every pot that you decide to take with you, every shirt that you decide to pack. So name one or two things that maybe, takes up too much room. You don't need it. It's frivolous. You don't need to have this in the van, but you continue to carry along with you.
Well, I would say there's two things. One is I have a oven in my new van, which sounds insane, but it is really nice to go from only being able to do pan cooking, especially as a person that cooks like almost every single meal from scratch. There's only so much you can do in a pan, and there's a lot of stuff you miss out with not being able to bake. The second thing that is definitely luxurious is, it's all kind of kitchen stuff. I have an Instant Pot in the van. I have a mini rice cooker, and I have a Ninja blender, all appliances that are just so luxurious. Like no, everybody could go without those three things, but I built this van with a big enough electrical system that it can handle those appliances. And it is just really nice if I'm going to like be in a rainy car for a day or have a really long day of driving to be able to like make a protein smoothie or actually have like a hot meal, or, you know, the Instant Pot is great because I can cook really good home cooked meals, but in like 15 minutes. So definitely like food focused, I think.
Well, I set you up for the answer that I wanted, and maybe it's changed because it's not the same thing anymore. It used to be you had 10 hot sauces at one point. Do you still carry a
Oh,
shit
I
ton of
still
hot
have
sauce?
10. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
apparently you don't
I
think that's
bought a bunch
frivolous.
in Mexico. That's true. But also once again with food, it's like I like carry hot sauce in my purse and take it somewhere if I know that I'm gonna want a specific kind of hot sauce. And I love, you know, sriracha for one thing, Cholula for another, Valentina for another, Texas peach for another. So yes, that's so funny that that's what you remember, because it still is true. I consider that a necessity at this point. I use it so much.
I guess so. Yeah. No, I thought that was funny. I like my hot sauces too, so that stuck out with me. Let's talk a little bit
Yeah.
about, I guess, solo versus traveling with people. Just to, I guess, briefly get out my story. I do like to solo travel because just for the same reasons you've mentioned in the past, that you get to do what you want when you want. You don't have to, sync with anyone else's schedule. You do your own thing, but sometimes it does get a little tough. My story that this podcast has heard a crap ton of times, but I went to Spain by myself back in March of 2020. If you remember March of 2020, that was some things were happening at that time. So the travel ban happened at that exact time that I was in Spain. I was by myself. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm stuck in Europe. I don't know when I'm going to get home. I don't know what's happening. No one knew what was happening. I called the State Department. They were like, I think you'll be able to get back as long as you're a U.S. citizen. So that was a little scary. So that made me realize, hey, this solo travel is cool, but when crap hits the fan, you kind of just want your mom and dad. So it was kind of weird. So
yeah, there's been a few moments like that for me too, both internationally traveling and, in the van. But I don't know. I think I found within myself, because, just to give a quick breakdown, I traveled in a van with a partner for a year, traveled alone for a year, traveled in a different van with a partner for about a year and a half, and then back to solo now. So, and I've been solo for the entire year of 2021. So what I have found is that when I know that there's going to be somebody there to help me or help take care of me, or I have the ability to panic, that I tend to do that more, and I tend to take advantage of that. And I tend to be more of like, I feel like a kid. I want my mom, like I'm scared or I'm nervous or whatever. But when it's just me, I've really found an inner strength of being like, there's nobody here to pick up the pieces. Nobody's coming to save me. I'm in a state completely by myself with nobody nearby. So I have to figure this out. And that's been one of the things I think it's why it's good for me to be in the van, is because it's really empowering in that sense, to have to know that you have to take care of yourself. You have to learn to trust yourself, rely on yourself. And I tend to be more relaxed and more put together when I'm by myself, just because I know nobody else is going to do it for me.
No, I like that, because I think that's kind of counterintuitive. People would think it would be the opposite. When you're by yourself and something goes wrong, you're like, and that is what was true even in my situation. It was scary. I thought, oh no. And people's asked me, oh my God, did you cry? Did you panic? I'm like, well, I didn't. I mean, kind of, but at the same time, what the heck was I going to do? I wasn't like I could ask somebody for help. So no, I agree. I understand that when you have somebody else to bounce your fears off of, it's easier to get scared. But when when things go south and there's no one else to tell and no one else to complain to, then you just have to kind of pick it up and do it yourself.
Yeah. I mean, there's always like some safety things that I always think about with like not being a woman traveling alone, but being a person at all traveling alone. Like I put in my new van a pocket door that has a lock. So I have a list of people that follow me on Find My Friends, so they know where I am at all times. I have a little knife that I sleep with next to my bed. So there are things that definitely like I implement when I'm by myself versus when I'm with somebody else. But I mean, that's just kind of the same as like if you were walking home at night by yourself, you're going to be more cautious and aware, and you're going to do things maybe a little bit differently than if you're walking with a crowd. So
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, the mental health aspects of things. Do you think that solo travel has maybe helped you with your mental health and be able to kind of, I guess, again, with the cheesiness, find yourself, or do you think that I mean, sometimes it makes you get in your own head, and it's not as easy. I can see probably both ways. Being with someone, obviously that creates stress too, but then there's somebody to bounce things off of. So I'm sure there's pluses and minuses in both ways of travel.
Yeah, growing up and in college, especially, like I was the person that um, I've always struggled with mental health. Like I said, I've been in therapy since I was a teenager, and I've been on a pretty set mental health medication routine for the last 10 years. And I was the person that was really reliant on other people, not necessarily like for my, like I didn't expect anybody to take care of me, but I just liked to be surrounded by other people all the time because I was nervous of being by myself and with my own thoughts and having too much time and space to overthink things and be anxious and all of that. So I was really, really nervous when I first got into the van, in that sense that like I wasn't going to be around my community all the time. But especially once I was by myself, I was going into the first chapter of solo female travel with a lot of heartbreak, a lot of trauma. My mental health was really flaring up, like I was not doing well. And I tried to kind of heal in the van and the Oregon area around people that I knew, and it just really wasn't working for me. So I ended up just heading south and chasing places that were beautiful and that felt good to me. And I was able to really process a lot of my feelings and have it go really well during that time. And still, it still is like how I kind of work through things is by going out into nature and being by myself. I've really transitioned from being a very social person, and I'm still social, but I really appreciate and cherish my alone time. And being by yourself in a van, especially before I had a dog, it was only me sometimes for like months, or I would only go into town and see other humans like once every 2 weeks for propane, water, and groceries. So I just had to learn to be my own friend and to once again rely on myself, give myself patience, give myself room to hurt and heal and grow and challenge myself in a lot of new ways. And so yeah, it's really just become kind of my safe haven, that is like my personal mental health is the best when I'm in the van. And that does not go for everybody. That is not like a whole blanket statement that can apply to everybody. But I just know that when I'm, in four walls of a house or a bedroom, I just don't feel quite as free or connected to the things that are important to me in life. And so the van is really kind of just my safe space for that. Not just from the actual physical van itself, but also for the outdoor aspect that it provides.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You said something there. I'm glad you did, because I have a question, about something you said 2 years ago. Of course, this is something you said in my ear, a couple hours ago. So I wanted to make sure it was still the case. But it was cool what you mentioned, that you have to, even though you're by yourself, you're spending 2 weeks by yourself, you still make sure you schedule time to be with yourself and to be your own friend. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I never really thought about having a relationship with yourself like most of my life. I was always investing in other people and really pulling on strengths of friendships and relying on other people for to provide me with certain aspects of friendship or community, or pulling on strengths that I had with different people in our relationship. But like I said, I've really grown to value and cherish my own alone time. And for me, that might just be doing something every single day that makes me feel good. As I've gotten, I'm almost 30 now, and now that looks like a solo routine. So, I try to wake up and go to bed at the same time every day. I set quiet time aside in the morning to be completely by myself in silence and journal. I set aside time to exercise. I walk my dog regularly, and sometimes, I listen to music or a podcast, but I've been working more at being okay in silence and just being alone, because I think when I've been struggling with mental health for so long, like I said, I was really nervous to be alone with my thoughts. And now that's kind of just something that I work and kind of exercise towards to make sure that it stays strong and present, and that I'm just practicing that, because I just have found that I am like, I'm quite a lot of fun. I enjoy my own company. And I think that learning to do things like go to a lake on a busy day when there's a bunch of other people and be okay with like taking some wine and a book and a floaty and just being there by myself, like not being afraid to go to the movies by myself or have a campfire by myself or go to dinner by myself. Just being your own friend gives you a lot of strength and empowerment and just freedom to do the things that you want to do and not feel like you're on, somebody else's timeline, kind of like you said with traveling with somebody else.
Yeah. Let's talk, I guess, kind of, obviously you can have the best mental health regimen possible. You can be, making sure that you're taking time for yourself. You can do all of these things right. And then external factors sometimes just mess that all up. And let's talk a little bit about, I guess, dealing with that and dealing with trauma that happens.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I think I've really worked hard to understand what my mental health looks like and means and what that is for me. And I've really learned through a lot of therapy and a lot of years of struggling, and people weren't really talking about mental health when I was younger and experiencing things, and I didn't really have the words to communicate how I was feeling or what I was feeling. So there's a couple things is like I've really worked hard to understand, like I said, my mental health, and I know that mine is a chemical imbalance. It's not circumstantial. It's not even necessarily seasonal. It's really something that people in my family also struggle with it, especially the women in my family. So learning to understand really what my own personal mental health looks like, but also what are my triggers, what are my coping mechanisms. That's really been my biggest strength in it, I think, is doing therapy that really was focused towards like, okay, let's stop trying to just heal you and let's just talk about how you can cope with the feelings that you experience when you feel them. So I know now I can feel when something's coming on. Like I just kind of am on the up climb right now of a little depressive episode. And it's one of the reasons I put that routine back in place is because I know I know when I can see that coming, and I know what I need to do to help me feel good. And that doesn't always work. Sometimes I don't have the capacity emotionally or physically or anything to take care of myself in that way. And sometimes it does get bad, but just really learning how can I live my best life and be okay with the things that I'm experiencing. I think that that's just been really important to me, and also just dropping some of the stigma. Like, my doctor back in 2010 or whatever used to say, oh, medication's only going to be temporary for you. And there was the times where I would stop taking it and I would just get right back on it. And I'm not saying I'm going to be on it for my whole life, but like being okay with that, if that is what happens, I think allowing myself to just accept it and stop seeing it as this like, downfall or this like negative thing that controls my life. I mean, it's a part of me and it's part of who I am, and it's that's okay with me, and just, yeah, it's just, it is what it is. All I can do is do the best I can with the cards I've been dealt.
I like that. I don't think that there should be a stigma behind it. It's not something to get better from. It's something that really kind of defines who people are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I've worked hard to be as open and honest about that. Like, I remember there was years where like my roommates, my best friends, my siblings, nobody knew I was in therapy or on any mental health medication. And now, like, I talk about it online to, thousands of people, and I have really vulnerable and open conversations with people, talk about it on podcasts, like write about it on Instagram, write about it on my website. Like, I've worked with meditation apps and a lot of things that focus around mental health because it just is really important. And we're at a time where people are really starting to be more open with it and really work against that stigma, work at breaking it down. And like, resources are growing. And, like, we're in a day and age where I have had the same therapist for almost 2 years, and I get to do virtual therapy with somebody I trust online every single week, no matter where I am. I'm able to, with the help of my mom, fill prescriptions, and she's able to ship me medication to wherever I am in the country. Like, it's really come a long way. And I know that there's still so much work to be done, but I just, whatever I can do to kind of help continue that process is really important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you're used to, I guess, being alone in those isolation times. So I don't even know how COVID really affected you, but that is a huge thing when it comes to mental health. I don't really think that given that you're kind of used to the isolation part, it probably was no different, So how did COVID affect both van life, and how did it affect, I guess, mental health as a whole? Those are two very different things, but
That's okay.
van life and mental health.
I got really lucky in the timing and how I chose to handle the beginning of COVID. I, like most people, I had my work hours cut. I was dating and living with somebody in a van at the time who was a server. So we were kind of hubbing around one little area. His restaurant shut down. So for, when the first 2-week quarantine or whatever, I was like, okay, at this point in my life, all of my best friends, most of my closest people in my life live in vans and travel full time. So a lot of us were not that far from each other. So we just said, okay, if we're going to have to hunker down and sit down somewhere, let's just go into the middle of the desert and do it together. We haven't seen each other. We haven't spent any time together. It's 2 weeks. Most of us have our work cut anyways. If we leave right now today, we can get there in 5 hours, and then we can sit still. We won't be spreading anything. For some people, like my friend that it sounds like you listened to a podcast with her, she wasn't going to drive all the way back to Indiana. That's more harmful than driving to some place that she could hunker down, right, for a chunk of time. So few friends and I, with our vans and all of our dogs, got together in the Southern California desert, and what was supposed to be a week or two turned into almost 4 months. As most people know, I think at first we got a lot of pushback about that. There was a lot of flack on the van life community in how are you guys still traveling full time? Why don't you go to your home? And I think a lot of people just don't realize, I didn't have an apartment. I had a brand new niece and an elderly grandma here. I had been traveling the country. I wasn't gonna drive multiple states, and I was gonna be more at risk and putting other people at risk by moving than just sitting where I was. So what we did is, at first it was the whole thing, gloves, masks, Clorox wipes. We would send one person in to go get everything we needed. It was you get toilet paper, you get propane, you get water, and then we come back together, so that we weren't all going to the same places, touching more things than needed. And there were times where we would just sit in the desert for 2 weeks before we'd even ever go back in for a refill on anything, sometimes 3 weeks. And what ended up happening, and I think there was some guilt at the beginning of well, you guys are just playing and having fun, but I realized that when comparing and kind of talking, maybe not comparing, that's a negative word, but I was really social distancing more than most of the people that I knew that had their bubble, because they're still driving around. Some people are still going to work, grocery stores, all of that stuff. So I just got really lucky that I was with a group of people that took COVID really seriously and really thought through what was going to be best for us. And I mean, we had a kiddie pool on the top of a bus, and we got a basketball hoop from Walmart at one point and had a little court. There was 15 dogs with us during quarantine, and we just did group meals together and went around, had campfires at night every night. And we got really lucky, and it was really a bonding time for us to be able to grow a lot of our relationships rather than be isolated somewhere in an apartment by ourselves. So I know that that's not the average story, but it was honestly one of my favorite times of the last 5 years that I've ever lived in a van. And
yeah, no, it sounds like it. Sounds cool to me. Yeah, for sure. I think everyone's going to wonder, you kind of alluded to, being a self-employed person, a freelancer, but everyone's going to think, well, that sounds cool, but that's not something I can do. So tell us just a little bit about kind of what you do for work.
I think I finally have found my words in the last year, but I do digital marketing and freelance writing. So I have my own social media and my own website that I monetize. Like I said, my website has really grown more into a resource thing. So I have a van life shop that I get affiliate money from. I do brand partnerships and sponsored content on social media as well for myself. So that's a little bit of my income. And then I take on short-term and long-term clients for contracted work, essentially. So what that can look like is maybe I get paid by a company to do sponsored blog content on my website for 3 months. Or maybe I run a business's social media for a certain amount of time or for a long time. So, but right now I'm holding 2, potentially 3 now long-term clients one I've been working with since the very beginning, all 5 years, helping out with social media content, online content, blogs, newsletters, all of that stuff. And that's for a female travel company, which has also allowed me to be able to travel internationally each year as well. And then I was a editor-in-chief for a van life culture magazine, doing just van life content, writing, handling online content, websites, social media, all of that stuff. It's really just kind of like around the online world of, it's a lot of social media, a lot of writing, a lot of photos.
Yeah, that's awesome for sure. So tell us, I guess you mentioned that maybe eventually you aren't going to travel as much, but you always want to kind of have that tiny home mentality. But what do you hope that the future holds? If you can, I guess, say it today. Obviously, we know the future. We never know exactly, but what's the goal?
Yeah, I think up until like maybe 6 months ago, I would have said, I'm going to do this. And I have absolutely no end thoughts. And I still don't. I still, like I said, think I'll be in the van for at least a few more years, full time, and then maybe part time. I'm not sure. But I think eventually the goal would be to buy a property, a chunk of property, and maybe just live in my van on it for a while, or come and go as I please, save up more money, probably build like a tiny home. But like I said, I don't ever see myself going to a stationary job, working in an office, having a set schedule. So I still want to be like, oh, it's great weather in Montana, I'm going to go to Glacier National Park for 3 weeks. Like, I like my freedom and I like to be able to do that. And still pursuing it, at least trying to do one international trip per year is really important to me too. So, especially now with a dog too, having a place to be able to leave my van if I need to go do something for a while, or I think that's really the only thing that I could even see myself leaning towards. It's really impossible for me to think about like buying a house or living in an apartment. I think I would go nuts pretty fast.
Yeah. Well, tell us how we can connect with you. You've mentioned a few times some of your touch points there. I kind of intentionally didn't ask you a ton of questions about like how to get a part of the van life, or how to do builds and all this kind of stuff, because I know you do have those resources. So if people are interested in that, or just following along, from their apartment, on what you're doing, how can they connect with you?
Yes. So everything online is under So We Bought a Van, SOWEBOUGHTAVAN. It's So We Bought a Van on Instagram, So We Bought a Van on Facebook. SoWeBoughtAVan.com is my website that has every blog post I've ever written, every podcast interview, van tour video I've done, details out what I've used in both my DIY builds, links to YouTube videos. The channel is also So We Bought a Van on YouTube. There's about five videos in there, and maybe one day I'll get around to doing more. I have a lot of the film, but everything is just So We Bought a Van. And I'm working at being better at DM. So if anybody ever has questions or wants to chat, send me a DM. I also have a questions and like let's touch base form on my website that will send me an email, and then we can kind of email from there. I have a lot of people reach out about general questions, or if they're doing their own build and they have a question and they want a piece of advice. So I'm super into meeting people and chatting with people. So please don't hesitate to get in touch or just follow along.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
So that was Katie Larsen. Hope you enjoyed that one. I certainly learned a lot just about the world of van travel, the world of, just being independent enough just to say, hey, I don't have anywhere to be for 3 months, and I'm going to go and take on the world. And sometimes she's done that completely alone. It was just a really interesting conversation to learn about vans and building vans, and the life that she's lived these last 5 years. Really impactful conversation to learn about the mental health side of things, and how what she's done now is really helpful to her. Just like she said, everyone's different. What works for her obviously is not necessarily going to work for everyone, but I really, really appreciated her candor there in talking about that. I'm happy that she's willing to do that, because as we know, and as she talked about, there is a stigma there that should not be there. I think mental health is an important thing to talk about. So I appreciate her conversation there. I appreciate her deciding to join me, obviously, as a van traveler and someone who, stays on public land. There's not always Wi-Fi, so I'm glad that we were able to catch her at some time when she's at home and able to conversate with me. Do check her out on So We Bought a Van. That's on Instagram, everywhere else. Her website, all that good stuff. Check her out. Give her the love there. Do check us out too. If it's your first time listening, follow us on Instagram as well. Not Enough Podcast is the handle. jacksonuff.com. Go leave us a review. Always appreciate that. 5-star review and those comments. I definitely always like to see that. But thanks for being here, and take it away, Chris.
This has been Not in a Huff with Jackson Huff. Thank you for listening. Be sure to join us next time, where we will interview another amazing guest who is sure to make you laugh or make you think. Or, hey, maybe even both. But until then, keep being awesome.